welcome to the Biokinetic K9 live on Friday. How are you guys? I hope you're having an excellent week. Well, I've been super busy, but a really interesting article came across my desk and I had to share it today. And this is what I'm going to be talking about. It's something that I've believed in for a long time, but there is proof of what I'm saying now. So this is really cool. But before we start, let me introduce myself. I'm Angela Hearn. I'm from the Biokinetic K9 owner and founder. I'm also a certified canine athlete specialist and a canine myofascial release practitioner. I love what I do. I really do. But I want to show you some interesting things. So let's get cracking. A little bit of house cleaning. If you see me on any other page, so I've shared this link in a few groups, and if you've seen me or the link there, please pop on over to our page, the Biokinetic K9, and like it. If you think your friends are going to enjoy what we talk about, please share it with them, because I promise you it's seriously interesting information. So give us a thumbs up, give us a like, and any comments, put it on our page, because then I know I will get your comment and I can answer you properly. So let's get cracking. I'm going to be speaking about precision in movement and muscle activation. Now, what are we talking about here? Well, the article that I was reading is all about kinetic precision. But what is kinetic precision? Really, like at its bare bones, it is about how you move and the precision in the movements that you do. So, for example, if I just want to move my arm, what muscles am I using to move my arm in order to do what I'm doing? But when you apply these movements to exercise, you want to, of course, get the maximum benefit of the muscles that you're activating by the movements that you're doing. So, for example, if I take a human and we're going to do a bicep curl. So a bicep curl is you just curling your arms, you've got a weight in your hand and you're curling, and you want to increase the size of your biceps, right? But what happens? If you just do a bicep curl and you're not thinking about what you're doing, and I always remember what my father said, it never matters about the weight that you're picking up. It's always about putting your mind in the muscle, making sure that the muscle you want to work actually is working. And you see many people in the gym and they're not there mentally. So, for example, you can do bicep curls, but if you don't do that full movement, so if you don't extend your arm and stretch the entire bicep out and then curl it back up to get the bicep to work and stretch it out, you see some people will take a weight that is maybe a little bit too heavy for them, and they will curl, and they will still, let me use my camera, they will still have the small bend in the arm because it's too heavy for them to stretch it out. So they still have a bend in their arm. And then what happens is that they get a short bicep. The bicep starts here. It doesn't start in the crease of the elbow. It starts here. And if you take a piece of string, and this is my dad, if you take a piece of string and it's longer and you push it together, you'll get a higher up curve. The bell curve will be higher. Same with the muscle. So you want to make it as long as possible in order for it to peak higher. So the people that are doing an incorrect movement, they're going too short because maybe the weight is too heavy. They get not only a shorter bicep, a bicep that stops here instead of here. They get a shorter bicep, but when they try and show off their biceps, it's not as high as it can be. So that range of movement determines the length of the muscle too. You want to get that full range to get a full muscle. And then if you also look at some people, if they're doing bicep curls, if that weight is too heavy, they start to use their shoulders. So as they go down, they'll use their shoulders. And they don't go all the way down with their arms, but they're using their shoulders. They bring their shoulder forward. So what happens is they hardly using the muscle that they think they're using. They think they're doing curls, but they're not getting the maximum effect of all their efforts. So your precision in movement is really important to work the muscle that you want to work. If your biceps are weak and you need to work your bicep, you need to work it correctly to get the best effect. Same thing happens with everyday movements. So say, for example, everyday movements is us just getting up and sitting down. So to get up and sit down, if we don't use anything, we are then using our legs and our butt muscles. Those are the muscles that are designed to move and work when we get up and sit down. But we sit down all day. And what do we do when we get up? We use our arms. And so we take off a lot of pressure off our legs and our butt muscles, and our legs and our butt muscles become weak. And this is, you'll see it in people. They, as we get older, that sexy butt, it starts to go away because we're sitting down all day and we're helping ourselves up as we stand up. If we're not exercising those muscles particularly, we lose their effect and we lose their nicety for the view. So a weak butt muscle will show when, say, for example, you need to lift your legs up to the side. You need to activate your glute muscles to contract so they can take that leg and lift it up. And people with weak butt muscles will find this difficult to do, so they don't do it. And then the butt remains weak. And this is really dangerous as you get along, and then suddenly you trip and you are falling, and you don't have that ability to aim, strengthen the butt muscle correctly to stop yourself from falling. And maybe you blow out your knee. So your precision in movement is really important when humans exercise, because otherwise we're going to be losing our normal functional ability to do things. So say, for example, if we keep on doing curls with our shoulders, and one day we just need to go and reach up to get a jar off the shelf that's not really heavy, and you have to go up and pick it up and then bring it to yourself. So you're going to use your bicep to bring it to yourself, but your shoulders are going to be really sore and it's going to be difficult, and you're going to be irritating your shoulder because you've done these repetitive motions incorrectly and not received the maximum benefit for the muscle you want to work. And worse, it's a repetitive motion. You've done it in the gym. You've created that compensatory action on the shoulder at a wrong angle, which puts a lot of strain on the shoulder. And now you've got to have, you've got the shoulder pain and you don't know why. You can't do normal shoulder exercises. You don't know why. You've been going to gym all your life after all. So that precision in how you move, so that you don't spend all those hours in the gym for nothing and not gain the maximum benefit that you can gain. Why? But now, let's take this thought of kinetic precision and apply it to our dogs. This is what I thought was so interesting. How can we apply that kinetic precision in our dog sport? Let's take one exercise example. So when they talk about kinetic precision, is to concentrate on the muscle that you're working and work that particular muscle consciously and correctly to get maximum effect. Let's look at our dog sport. How can we do that with the dog? We do it all the time in our dog sport. When we ask our dog for competition heeling, I use this example all the time because it is so prevalent and we do it so many times. Let's look at the heel work. When the dog does heel work for you, that dog has to consciously think about how he's putting his body. It's not in a natural position, so he has to think about it. So now he's thinking about turning his head, and he's thinking about staying with you. And if he forges forward, you're going to correct him back. But with a lot of the dogs, when they are heeling, they are looking up, and the top line is angled, and sometimes their butt is low. There isn't a normal free range of movement in the back legs. So their butt is lower to the ground. They don't have a full range of movement in the muscles of the hind legs. But worse, the dog is concentrating on this movement. He's concentrating on it. And we are practicing it over and over again. So what's happening with his kinetic precision, the precision of his movements? He's doing really good heel work because he's looking up at you. But in the back end, because his back is lower, his legs are in a semi-squat. They're not walking freely. They're in a semi-squat. And they're walking not at the full range of motion that the muscles allow. Like the bicep. My bicep, full range of motion is that I can straighten my arm. Can you see? I can straighten my arm. But if I keep on doing a curl to here all the time, I get a shortened bicep. Same with the dogs. If they keep on walking in that stacked format of the back legs, they get shortened, tight muscles. And their bum muscles, their butt muscles, become weaker. That is what's going into their muscle memory. Oh my word. Can you imagine what's happening with the dog? Those muscles in his back legs are getting shorter, tighter, and now you want him to jump, fight a helper, etc. Do you understand the increase for injury with your dogs? Just because you are only concentrating on these certain aspects in your sport. Similarly, flyball. They jump, 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 turn one direction. Dogs are going to turn one direction. You are never going to change their dominant direction in a sport because you want to get the maximum out of them. You can't force them to use a less dominant side just for the sake of balance. You need to do your balance elsewhere. But when it comes to the sport and the trial, the dog's going to run, jump, 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 launch, and turn on his dominant side every time. Because that's how you'll get maximum speed out of this dog. Same things are happening there. Muscle compensations, muscles get shorter, overstretched, etc. But they're doing it on purpose, repetitively. So your precision in movement changes. So when your dog is at home, their normal movement is now not the normal movement of a dog. Their muscles have grown in a particular way for how you've designed to use them in sport. And that's how they have to live. So let's just see how this impacts some of the lifestyle of the dog. So many people will take their dog to training. If they warm up, it's rare to see. But some people are cottoning onto this, which is really good. I'm really pleased for that. So what happens is they take their dog from the crate, from the car to the field. Very little warm-up is done most of the time. But there are some that do it. So let's not paint everybody with the same brush. There is some warm-ups happening. They'll do the exercises, and then very few people do a cool down. So the exercises have caused now shortening of muscles, etc., that repetitive motion. And the cool down is supposed to include a dynamic stretch where the dogs stretch their muscles out and they uncrick themselves from that stayed positions or those repetitive movements in the training. Those things don't happen. And then people just go and put their dog back in the crate. And now when you are training your muscles, if you're doing any strength work in your IGP, in your agility, in your flyball, whatever, any sprinting is a strength exercise. If you're doing all of those things, the muscles are shortening, the muscles are getting frayed, and now they're going into a crate. No dog stands freely and roams around in a crate. So what happens is they go into crate and they lie, and their back legs are comfortably curled under, not necessarily underneath them, but to the side, but definitely curled, not stretched out to the back. So those shortened muscles cool down in that shortened position. causing them to become short and stay short. And then we take them out again to do whatever training again, but then they're living with these shortened muscles. So a short muscle that ends here hasn't got that full range of motion, hasn't got that full strength. The muscle hasn't grown to its maximum ability. So it stays short and it stays that little bit weaker than what it could have been if you had done all the movements correctly. So we've got, when it comes to dogs lying with their legs curled up in front of them, what happens? They get no dynamic, there's no stretching happening at all. They'll get shortened hamstrings, the back of the leg. And so you'll see some of them will walk a little bit wonky because those hamstrings are not stretched out properly. They have short hip flexors. So right in front of our own hips, the muscles that help bring our knee up. From standing, if we just have to march and bring our knee up, those hip flexors, those become short. And when they are short, it's difficult to stretch your leg out backwards. So if this is my top of my hip and this is my arm is my leg, there's a muscle here that helps me raise my leg. And that hip flexor becomes short. And so you can't stretch the leg out backwards. So when they do a jump, their legs are rather tucked because it's easier. They can't stretch it out. They don't have the flexibilities to stretch their legs out. They don't have the strength to pull their legs back in, so they just keep it tucked. So yes, it can be a jumping technique, but it can also be that the dog actually can't. It can't. And if it does do this, it'll tear muscle. So, and then those muscles are difficult to find and they're difficult to repair. So if a dog is in a crate, they develop weaker pasterns because they're not stretching, they're not using them, they just, the front legs just lie there. A dog that has been crate rested for many weeks, you will always see them have weak wrists. They will bend too much. It's easy to get them strong again, but weak wrists is because many times they are in the crate for too long. And of course, all of this then goes around to weak core muscles. So your continued training causes these short range of motions, which dogs are concentrating on. So the muscles set in their way and nothing's happening at home. They're not being warmed up properly or cooled down properly. They've been put in a crate where they're lying curled, comfortably curled, but then this is how the muscles stay. And what happens then? What happens now? Well, welcome compensations. Compensations are there because your main muscle, my bicep that I wanted to work, I wanted to make my bicep stronger, your main muscle has been not made fully active. So I haven't had my whole bicep pumping, only this muscle working. I've incorporated my shoulder to do my bicep, that my arm is not straight, etc. So what happens is those main muscles, they're not as strong as what they should be. They could be much stronger. They're shorter and weaker. And you've then created compensations in other parts of the body because the main muscle to do the job, like sitting down, our butt muscles, haven't been worked properly. So we start using our hands and our arms to get up and down. And so we go on. But when we actually have to go to the bathroom, it's a different story. It's difficult. So when we have, for example, weak butt muscles, and you see this in joggers, because they've got short hamstrings, their butt muscles become weaker, and they will then, and their hip flexors become very, very short because their leg very rarely stretches out to the back of them. It's always coming forward. So the hip flexors become short. And when they have these short hip flexors, there's a small muscle on the front of our leg by the hip. It's called the tensor fasciae latae. This muscle then has to start working a lot. Let me show you where that is in a dog. Hold on a second. Let me put this up here. There. So here is your dog's back leg. So the blue star, that is the tensor fasciae latae. But it runs into the fascia that goes over the knee. So you can see it running there over the knee. But when the butt muscles, the muscles right on top of the dog's hips by the tail, either side of the tail, when those muscles become weak in the jumps, in being able to stretch the legs out because the hip flexor is tight, this muscle now has to do a lot of work. And it does all the work of the glutes, the butt muscles. And because it's doing all the work of the butt muscles for putting legs out to the side, so lateral movements where the dog slides and stops itself from sliding, bringing the legs, all the contractions and taking the leg out, it's taking on all of that work instead of the bigger glute muscles that must do the work. But the dangerous thing is that muscle runs into the fascia that runs over the knee. So every time that muscle tenses, this fascia pulls on the knee. And so compensations. And if you do that for long enough, well, the muscles around your main muscle, the back muscles are weak enough. And that tensor fascia lata has to work much harder to compensate for the weakness. That's when you get your blown knees. So it's very important that when you do your exercises to strengthen the butt muscles of a dog, because when you do healing, those butt muscles become weak. You have to then strengthen them on purpose, and you have to watch the action and the movement of the dog to make sure that the right muscles are becoming strong. This is really important. The exact same thing happens in humans. The exact same thing. But when it comes to dogs, most of us, I was one of them. I'm not pointing a finger. I was one of them. We're just training our dog. My dog's getting strong. Do you know how much time I exercise my dog when we go and train Angela? Especially IGP. There's a lot of components in IGP. There's fighting, there's heel work, there's tracking, there's a jump, there's an A-frame. There's lots of things that a dog must be able to do. But the more we do those particular exercises, the more we create weak spots, weak areas in the dog. Similarly, when it comes to agility, dogs are jumping all the time. They're getting overstretched muscles, or when they're doing weaves. Very few people concentrate on the rear end drive of a dog to push the dog through the weave. The dogs go through the weaves on their front legs, their front shoulders, and everything's on the front shoulders, and the back just wiggles through, and the torque on the back is unreal if they don't have the muscular strength to control that drive and push their front through the weaves as well. You need four-wheel drive for weaves. Very important. When you're working with fly bulldogs, same thing. Even your luring dogs, they are running flat out and then suddenly they have to turn at a very sharp angle. The torque on the muscles is serious. You have to strengthen those muscles that are being used. If the dog just runs, he's using momentum, he's galloping, he's using momentum, he's not using every single muscle in that movement on purpose. He's not thinking about activating certain muscles when he's running fast. He's just running fast. Momentum takes him. So how can we get this with our dogs? The real nice thing is that when you do your conditioning, you have to concentrate on that particular muscle movement. That's the most important thing. Can the dog move his body? Does he know what to do with his body, with his legs, to strengthen an area of his legs, an area of his chest, his shoulders, his midriff, his core? Can you get your dog to move his body in a particular manner so that those muscles become strong? Can you get that mind-body connect in your dog with his muscles in his body? There needs to be that connection when doing your exercises. It's like my dad said, you need to put your mind in the muscle. Then it doesn't matter about the weight that you're doing. If I stand here with 0 weights in my hand and concentrate on doing a curl, I will start to perspire and I will start to feel that burn in my bicep. If you concentrate on working your muscles. So if I know how to work a particular muscle underneath my scapula, which not many people know how to do, I can work them because I've felt it, and I know what I'm looking for. You need to be able to arrange that situation for your dog. And you can do it. There needs to be this mind-body connect, and you can do it, especially if your dog is starting out. You want to encourage specific techniques with your dog. So a technique of sitting, of how they fold their legs to sit down, how they fold their legs to go into a down, how to unfold themselves going into a stand. There are many ways of doing sit to get the attention of particular muscles. You can do a sit just for strengthening the back legs, or you can do a sit to strengthen the shoulder girdle as well. Same sit exercise, but execution is different. And this is the nice thing about exercising your dog correctly for movement precision. You'll get much better positive results in your dog's body. They'll become stronger in areas you need on purpose every time. So you'll get the maximum benefit, you'll get positive results, but what's really nice, you are creating that muscle memory. So the results are long-term. So even if, and it happened, I spoke to one of my members, it was about 2 weeks ago. Her dog had a bit of jip gut, so had a bit of gastro. And he was down and out for almost a week. And in that week, quite rightly, she didn't train him because he was physically weak. I mean, if we have a stomach bug, we are physically weak. And so she rested him. But after that, his mind was, oh, come, let's go train. But she knew his body wasn't ready yet. And so what did she do? Hello. Is she brought him back to full strength again with the exercises she knows he needs. So with him, it was a full body conditioning and then strengthening exercises for the sport he requires. And what she found, she even wrote to me, she said, oh my word, Angela, you cannot believe it. But I did this with my dog, and thank goodness I knew what to do. But the really nice thing is his body bounced back so quickly. And that's the beauty. The bounce back from anything, whether it be an injury, a bit of jip gut, or you're away on holiday and you can't train. The bounce back happens quickly because the dog has got that muscle memory. It's just awesome. So there is one thing that I want to show you as well, which I thought was very interesting, which is particular to our sporting dogs. The interesting thing was the conclusion. And there were some things, a lot of human conclusions on the various exercises that they tested. They tested with electrodes, etc., on the intensity of the use of the muscle and the compensatory muscles within this study. But what they found is, for the people that were sports people, so they tested sports people and they tested people that are sedentary in their lives. They don't do sport. But of the more active people, they seem to perform their exercises with less success. Can you believe it? Less success. Many had habitual negative movement patterns. They already had compensatory muscle memories happening in their bodies. So when you just ask them to do a normal movement, automatically their bodies started to compensate, and the main muscles targeted for an exercise wasn't firing at its maximum capacity. I thought that was so interesting. So even in humans who do sport, they have got automatic muscle compensations happening in their body if they just have to do a normal movement to target a particular working muscle. Then they took the load of people that were normal everyday people that don't do exercise. They weren't sports people. And they found that the less active people gave a much better successful reading with regards to their primary moving muscles versus their compensatory muscles, because their body didn't know better. Their body said, oh, I have to move my back muscle, let me move it. Where the sports people is, oh, I've got to move my butt muscle, but my butt muscle knows that when it needs to move, it can move other parts of the body as well, so it doesn't move maximum. The non-sporting people's body didn't know this. So when it comes to our sport dogs, this is really interesting. What do you think it means? Let me see here. Where am I? There. What do you think it means? For me, I'm going to put my personal thing here. When it comes to sport dogs versus pet dogs, sport people versus Joe Soap. When it comes to sport dogs and rehab, or sport dogs and exercises, your dog has got certain compensations happening in his body because of the exercises you do in his sport. And so you have to watch the movement of his body. We just did a workshop on this, and the compensations in a dog's body is unreal, especially the dogs that do sport, especially my dog who did IGP, and some of the other dogs that I'm seeing. So when it comes to a sport dog and they go for the rehab, that sport dog has already got compensations that your rehab professional has to be made aware of. They have to understand the sport, and they have to know how those muscle compensations are happening if your dog gets injured. If you're doing exercise, which is conditioning, fitness exercises for your dog that is in a sport, you must also be aware of this. If your dog has got an imbalance in muscles but is not injured, you can't go to rehab because your dog's not ill. But you can condition your dog if you know how to activate the correct muscles for a particular exercise. It's very different for pet dogs. Pet dogs will just do it. If they don't have to do sit to stand every day and they're not in a heel position all the time, they don't have to work their body in a wrong angle. They'll just sit, they'll plop. And you ask them to stand up, they'll use up all their muscles and they'll stand. Not so much your sport dog. Your sport dog will use compensatory muscles, and you have to be aware of this. That's really important. There are differences. Sport dogs require rewiring in their movements when you do your conditioning exercises. They require some rewiring to a certain degree. So what is really important, if you can, be careful and be mindful of that correct movement around exercises that you do with your dogs, because the correct movement will produce the results. An incorrect movement, if you're doing certain exercises in your training and then you just incorporate those exact same exercises in your conditioning, you're not creating the necessary areas of strength that you require. You are missing those muscles. You're not activating those muscles. You need to look at the precision in the movement. And the best way to do precision in the movement is to do things first slowly. Get them to rewire their muscles, rewire their muscle to mind connection. Get them to understand, get them a little bit body aware, ask them to move their feet individually. That body awareness is really important. And you can do exercises for it so that you can work just one leg if you have to. So the most important thing here for me is start early. You know the old saying of when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. The next best time is now. Start early with your dog. If you can do those exercises correctly, and if you can do them, start slowly with your dog so that your dog can understand and he has to think about what he's doing. Just like when you started your IGP, when you started off with your heel work, what was heel work? It was just to get the dog to look up at you. It was just to take one step. It was just to take 2 steps. Oh, wow, for like 2-3 weeks. With your conditioning, it's actually a lot shorter than training an IGP dog. It is. But get them to Do things mindfully. Start slowly with the exercise. Get them to understand what their body must do. That's the most important thing that I can say to you. Don't skip out on this, because the more you concentrate on your sport, especially how our sports are today, the sports demands have changed, and we are getting our dogs to fit into the demands. So their body positions are changing. Everything's happening, and we have to try and keep our dogs aligned and moving freely within themselves, but also to get the maximum strength out of the muscles that we require from them, so that should there be dew on the grass one day when you're training, your dog doesn't slide and then injure himself, because he's not used to putting his foot out. His butt muscle isn't strong enough for him to do that, and so he puts out his leg using a whole lot of that tensor fascia latte, and he tweaks his knee. These things happen. It happens by accident. It happens sometimes, well, you didn't think, you didn't know. But now you do. So be mindful of what you're doing. Start slowly, and you will see the speed in your dog increase. So slow movements to start creates a much faster and more powerful dog in the end. And isn't that what we all want from our sport? All right, so that's me. That's it for today. I'm hoping you had a very fabulous week. Let me just round myself up here. If you need to get hold of me, my name is Angela Hur, and you can get hold of me at the Biokinetic Canine. My website is thebiokineticcanine.com. And if you need to email me for anything, you can get me at fit@thebiokineticcanine.com. I'm happy to answer any questions about what you may have seen here today. And there you go. Have a very super weekend. Remember, get your dog to do things on purpose. That precision in movement gets you thousands more percent. Linda, hi. Thank you. Oh, you learned a few things. Mission accomplished for me. If you've learned a few things, awesome. That means your dog is better off for it, because you are a better handler automatically. That's great. All right, guys, I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to put my info up here. Let me see if I can get myself technically correct and not press the wrong button. So here I am. Shireen, hi. So glad you could make it. I'm hoping you all enjoyed. Remember, if you like what you saw, please pop over to my page and give us a thumbs up. If you have any questions, put them in the comments box. I'm happy to answer. All right. Cheers, guys. Have a very super weekend. Ciao.